Good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome to the final session of the third annual RMUS Canada Tech Week. I am Kevin Todderell, joined as occasionally by Fraser Hahn with some very special guests, Scott Knuckleby from Ontario Tech and Andy Olson from RMUS. So it's pretty exciting to have the whole gang here for our final session. So it's been a great week. We've had some incredible panels. We started off, more broadly talking about some market trends, talking about how the Ukraine is affecting all kinds of things in the drone industry. And then we've moved forward with some specifics on autonomy. We've talked about AI. We've talked about advanced industrial inspections. We've talked about drone as a first responder. Had a great interview with Captain Fox from Chula Vista. We have had Fraser doing some interviews. I've done some interviews. It's been a great week. And so our focus here today is to kind of bring things together, bring some context to the world, and to talk about a few really key initiatives that we at RMUS will have in place for the rest of the year, including our road shows, which will be back coming in mid-May. So with all that, let's get right into some of the content here. So Jonathan, if you would please go ahead and give us a quick. That would be the last slide. Yeah, there we go. Oh, this is. I feel like we're going back. Okay, you can go to the second slide. Fantastic. So let's talk about really some of the key market trends that have been a theme throughout the week, and we talked about it: AI and autonomy, and what is that meaning to everything? And so, Fraser, what do you think for you is so far the most exciting about AI and autonomy?
Well, it's a big question. Really, there's sort of two areas here. We have the automation of the data collection process, and then we have, if you could call it that, the automation of gleaning insights from that data. So we can automate the actual flight profile or mission profile if we're not talking about a flying vehicle, and then some analytics that are going to come out of that data. So I think, to be honest, the most exciting and impactful part of this for me is the analytics on the data that are actually going to automatically detect, maybe automatically classify and describe defects in infrastructure assets or something else that we may be looking for.
Right. And so that's all going to be important. And I think one of the things that you see as we go through this is that we are going to continue to see more and more in terms of autonomy. All right, if you would advance the slide, Mr. Usher. So let's talk about some of the hardware technologies and how it applies. So we've talked to a number of different trends. One of them is this single control trend with multi-vehicles, multimodal as we call it, so air, land, and sea vehicles. And that's going to be very, very important, this whole concept of multimodal. And a lot of the reason is as we start to see more sophistication in the way robotics inspection and public safety programs are run, we're going to see more coming together of the piloting, and we're going to see more need for simplification of the system. So a lot of these things will be autonomous, but there will still certainly be manual flight, and that is going to really bring home the ability for ease of control and ease of training for people that are doing these. So why is it really important as we start to see this conversion of sensors on multiple platforms? What's really makes sense in terms of the synergies for these types of things?
So there's some sort of really big, obvious ones there. And even if the systems are going to be completely autonomous, we need some way to initiate or trigger missions or direct them, et cetera. So sort of some of the more obvious ones from having multiple different types of platforms in different mediums working from the same control interface is there's a huge training benefit. So cross-training is going to become much easier. You get that benefit of familiarity from using one sort of interface to control multiple platforms. This also means you're going to ultimately have fewer teams, fewer field teams with more tools. They're going to perform their work more effectively. And then, sort of more broadly, from a fleet management perspective, you're going to ultimately have similar maintenance processes and policies that you're following. The same people can do this work on the management of the systems. Um, and then I think the next step to this would really be, hopefully, to start gathering similar types of data from these multiple modes of collection. So we've talked a lot this week about what are we going to do with all this data? Ideally, we have some sort of management platform that's going to collate all of this into an easily navigable interface. We're going to be having algorithms do some analysis on that data, and so it would be really great if we had sort of similar types of data ingested by the system. So next step, hopefully, will be that we have sort of aerial vehicles, ground vehicles, and maybe even ROVs, underwater vehicles, gathering similar types of data from similar sensors, or at least have that compatible, so that this is ultimately just making the process of review and analysis and then decision making easier for the people who need to do that.
Perfect. All right. So let's bring Scott and Andy into the discussion. So Jonathan, if you want to take us out of the slides for a second, and we'll get our handsome visages on the screen there. So let me throw it first of all over to you, Scott. So obviously we'll talk a little bit more about the Mars Lab and the Autonomy Lab in a second, but just what's the most important for you about the ability to make some of these sensors multimodal and deployable on multi vehicles?
Well, I think just as noted, like the ability to capture more data, all right, and then so it's more of the sensor that's important than necessarily how it's delivered, right? So you would choose the delivery that makes the most sense, whether it's aerial, ground, or amphibious or water based, say. So it's really agnostic to how it gets there. It's just we want the data. That's ultimately what we're looking for in order to do inspections and so on. So having sensors that can work on different platforms is great, because then you can work with one. You don't have to work with different types for different types of platforms. So having ones that can work on various platforms is preferred for sure.
So from a design and a build perspective, what do you see the biggest challenges of making these sensors multimodal are going to be?
Well, the big one obviously is if you want to put on an aerial platform, then weight and size are huge restrictions, right? So, the lighter the weight, not necessarily as important for a ground-based vehicle, but it's definitely important for an aerial-based vehicle. Uh, Anytime you add more weight, you reduce flight times and so on. So, I think the smaller the sensor package, the better in terms of just more flexibility in where you can deploy or how you deploy it.
Or we're just going to start seeing giant drones too, right?
Well,
Absolutely.
then you can, anything with drones, right? Like if you can keep it under the weight restrictions, then like in Canada, it's easier to fly them. You don't have to have special licenses. There's not restrictions, right? So um, as soon as you get bigger ones, then it becomes a lot more difficult to fly them in certain places.
Perfect. So Andy, I want to talk to you because you have a unique background in that you started drone programs. You've had extensive hands-on application for bomb tech work with ground robots, and lately you've been using the Deep Trekker series for the underwater ROVs. So I'm curious to you is how like do you think in public safety specifically, more generally, do you think we will see that all the robotics operational expertise will fall under one sort of department or group within the department, or do you see that being kind of like it is now, which is spread out over three different centers? And what do you think would be optimal?
I think optimal is a tough one. I mean, robots have been around for a while, and it's always a challenging question because every department has sort of unique requirements, and uh, everybody has a little bit different setup. And police will be different from fire department, and the fire department will be different from other agencies. But I think the common thread is that this is becoming more and more specialized, It's becoming more complex. There's bigger training issues. So it needs to be centralized in some form. There needs to be a person, a small group that takes ownership of these so that they understand them. Because you can't operate a system today and be an expert 3-6 months from now. It's something you have to keep your skills up. The technologies, as we all know, is changing so quickly. Most of us here are doing this full time, and I think we struggle to keep up with all the changes in technology. Literally this week, you've shown like just a ton of things that didn't exist a year ago. So for most departments, that's going to be the challenge. Is it can't be a part-time job forever. They'll have to dedicate people and resources and a program to all these kind of systems.
Right. And in a way, the way, we see it going is that because of that and everything we said about simplifying training, simplifying safety, simplifying policy, procedures, center of excellence, we really think that is going, and the sooner it can get into sort of one area of expertise, the better. And that's also going to really help for the broader data collection, because as we start to collect data with the same sensor on multiple kinds of robots, it's going to make for easier data merging, right? And so that's just going to have a huge impact on what we can do with the data.
Yeah, ultimately the collection will get cheaper. The more of it that's collected, then we hope it would get better quality as well.
Right. And so last thing, just to kind of close off on that first point, is Andy, you just brought up a great point about things that didn't exist, and we haven't gone into it as much in detail, but we certainly had John from Autel, and we talked about the fixed wing platforms. But one of the things that didn't really exist, particularly for public safety, was these multi-use fixed wing VTOL platforms. I mean, fixed wings have been around forever in the in the mapping. In the mapping, EBs might even be the best selling drone. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they've sold more EBs than Phantoms, right? Probably Phantoms, but anyways, it's definitely the best selling fixed wing drone. But in terms of VTOL and things for not just mapping, that's pretty new, don't you think? And what do you think that means? That now we've got options, don't we, in that kind of space?
Agreed. And I think we always had options in this sort of Class 1 fixed wing UAV space, but the landscape has typically been kind of murky. And I would say the main thing is that it's been not very accessible. The price points have been very high. The user experience have kind of left something to be desired. But we're beginning to get to a point where we have some really, really good options that are user friendly. Price point is pretty good. We have kind of integrated payloads and control interfaces that make this very accessible option. That sort of, without too much specialized training, people are going to be able to deploy effectively and really get the most out of them.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Andy, do you have anything you wanted to add to that quickly?
Yeah, I agree. I think what we're seeing now with some of the VTOL systems almost provides the best of both worlds. Most public safety are using quad rotors, but the VTOL fixed wing provides 2, 3, 4 times the endurance. It'll provide greater distances. So as we start to look at the beyond visual line of sight regulations come in, now being able to go 3, 4, 5, 15, 20 miles is going to become an option. And it's going to be tough to do that with the quad rotors that are out right now. So, and it's all a question of efficiency too. If you're looking at the cost of a piloted aircraft and the complexities of training and operation and maintenance compared to a much smaller fixed wing or VTOL system, it really becomes a cheap alternative or a less expensive alternative.
Perfect. Okay, so all right, so that was a great start out. I want to pivot, Jonathan. If you could go back to the slides for me, just skip ahead to go ahead, please. There we go. So I want to talk about a couple of key initiatives, and so this is part of why I brought Scott on. Is many of you will have seen the announcement last month of the RMUS Canada Autonomy Lab. So we're really, really excited about the Autonomy Lab and some of the projects that we're going to be running on that. The key for the Autonomy Lab is what it is, and it is an applied research partnership with Ontario Tech University, and we are going to be announcing a couple of other partners for that as well. But the intent is to take technology, take relationships that we have with existing research institutions like Scott's Mars Lab, and bring them together with companies in the field like OPG, who we saw one of their case studies yesterday, and many others to start delivering autonomous types of data collection, air, land, and sea in the field. And so that's our main thing. So we're actively looking for corporate partners to deploy these, and we have two really big initiatives right now coming in. That one of them, which we'll talk about in a second, is journalism first responder programs, and the second one will be the DJI Doc Beta programs. But for now, I'd just like to talk about the lab itself and really what it means. So, so with that, I want to give Scott a couple of minutes here to introduce, his background of the partnership and the Mars Lab in Ontario Tech. So, Scott, maybe you can give us a little bit of background and how you see it kind of tying into this projects with RMUS.
Sure. So, yeah, as Kevin notes, my lab's the Mechatronic and Robotic Systems Laboratory at Ontario Tech University, or Mars Lab for short. We do a variety of products related to robotics, mechatronic systems, autonomous systems. We've had ongoing projects with Chemical Corporation and currently with Ontario Power Generation. In terms of working with RMUS, this is a perfect fit. As was already started noted, these systems are getting more and more complex, and their capabilities are getting greater. And yes, they're easy to maybe quickly teleoperate and do something out of the box. But you'll find like a lot of places they'll buy, say, a robot, they drive it around a bit, they do a couple little operations, and then it quickly starts collecting dust because they don't have the expertise to take it to the level that they really need to deploy it, say, autonomously and so on. And that's where partnering with someone like us as a university, where we have that expertise, so we can come in, we can work with our industry partners, like we work with OPG, we can do proof of concepts of systems and see how they work, and then whether it makes sense then to further deploy it. And then at that point, then the company can take over. So I think that intermediary phase, or it's an intermediary between the vendor who's supplying the robotic system and the end user. There's a bit of a gap right now, and that's where this lab sort of will fit in. And we're happy to be partnering with RMUS on that.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's very, very exciting. And so I thought we could maybe talk a little bit more about. Obviously, we went into depth with the project with the Sydney generating station, the substation there with Spot. But I thought we'd maybe just talk about it a little bit more if people met with it. So, Jonathan, if you want to just quickly pop up the slide, and then we'll let Scott talk a little bit to the project. So this is an example of two things. So we've got some a little bit more advanced autonomy with auto walk missions that Spot is providing, and then we've also used the autonomy in the analysis side of it too, to identify first of all some gauges. So maybe Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about both of the applications for AI in this one, in the auto walk and the actual analysis, if you would.
Sure. So, as Fraser noted early on, there are two aspects of using AI in these applications. The first is gathering the data. So in this case, we have a Boston Dynamics Spot dog that's been programmed to do auto walks at the Sydney generating station. So just a little background, that's a small run-of-the-river generating station in Ontario. It's I think it was built in 1910. So it's over 100 plus years. It was not designed for robot dogs to walk around and go and collect data. But we're showing that, with these technologies, and here's some examples on the screen. These are from the plant where we're actually able to get images of the gauges. We're using the Levitas's AI platform to then analyze the data. So from those images, so you don't have to have an operator looking at each image taken. The AI system analyzes it, gives you the value. It could then alert you that something's wrong with one of those readings, or if everything's okay, it can keep going. So it's a perfect example where we use AI in terms of just getting around the facility, but also then analyzing the data. And it's that analyzing the data that's probably the biggest area that's going to be growing. because it's easy to collect a lot of images and lots of pictures and lots of data, but analyzing that data in a cost-effective manner is sort of where things are headed, and that's where AI will be a real useful tool. And here's an example. You can see a safety board. We have fire extinguishers, a blanket. They go missing. It will alert you that they're not there anymore. So just automating an inspection. So this, this facility, there's no operators there normally. They go once or twice a month to do routine inspection. Well, you could have a spot dog there, because in this case, we've been doing 2 different auto walks 3 times a day. So it was 6 auto walks for the last week. So this is actually ongoing right now. The dog is still there. We've been piloting it since last Friday, and it's done about 20 something plus missions with no issues. So you can get a lot more data. You can start looking at trends, things going on, which you couldn't necessarily do, with human operators. This site is, fairly close, about an hour from our university, but Ontario Power Generation has 66 dams spread out through the province, and a lot of those are quite remote. So just to get workers there to do an inspection or to find out if something's going wrong is costly. If you had the dog on board there, it could find it in a matter of minutes. So
Perfect.
it's a great
Jonathan,
use
can you
case.
come back to the screen for us, the main screen? Yeah. There we go. All right. So I think as we talked about, so that's a great example of a ground-based project where we've deployed some of the autonomy. We've also deployed some partnerships with Levitas, who has also partnered with us on the autonomy lab for exactly the kinds of things that Scott has talked about. And so we can apply this really into any kind of application. But that gives you an idea. If you have remote locations or if you have areas where you want to collect lots of data autonomously and then start to get into the analysis. And I think if you go, and we have a podcast with Johan, who is the chief data officer at Levitas, and he pointed out, if you think of AI really from an analysis or collection or an observation perspective, there's kind of 3 levels, and one is just using it just to identify things. That's kind of step number 1. We can train it to do that. Step number 2, where we kind of are in these projects, is to start identifying, as Scott pointed out, different trends or different things that are happening. And then the final level is when we're actually going to be making some hard decisions or basic decisions based on the analysis of those imagery, right? And so if you can envision right now, for example, whether it's an aerial mission where you're flying a waypoint route in a drone, doing something similar with an ROV, or with Spot where you're doing an auto walk. In those situations, you would be analyzing something on the robot in real time. Based on any anomaly you detected, then you would run some kind of submission and collect additional data without any input for the operator or any other deviation. You do that data collection and then return to the mission, or depending on what you found there, you would do yet another subroutine. And so that to me is pretty exciting. And so I'm sure you feel the same way, Scott. Excellent. So so Andy, this is we haven't really talked about this. So when you look at this kind of technology, and people maybe get a little nervous when they think of AI in public safety, and they're just thinking, oh, it's facial recognition. But there's a lot of different sort of safety and security and homeland security and hazmat applications for these kinds of things, automatic walks and automatic detention. What are your thoughts on those areas?
Yeah, I think AI, like Fraser mentioned earlier, it's a huge topic. But where I see it benefiting is, we were mentioning, some of these operations and systems are becoming more complex. There's more workload placed on the operator, whether it's just monitoring a system, monitoring the environment, or processing information. So AI, I know there's a lot of negative sort of thought about AI right now, but I think in our world, I think what it does is it helps to reduce operator workload, improve efficiency, whether it's making a system easier and safer to fly, whether it's processing information faster. I think in that sort of environment, I think it's going to change. It's going to change everything. It's going to make these systems better, more efficient, safer, more user friendly. I think it'll check all those boxes.
Excellent, exciting. Okay. So Jonathan, if you can go back to the slides. So we're going to go to slide number, no, one more. Excellent. We're going to go to slide number 8, and then after this, I want to go to slide number 10, but leave it on slide number 8 for now, and then we'll let Scott know. So the other big part, in addition to Spot and some of the ground robotics that we're going to be doing at the Autonomy Lab, is drone in the box technologies. So we'll go into that. We see this as two pretty distinct applications. Number one is going to be, industrial applications across energy, mining, and infrastructure. And number two will be drone as a first responder, DFR for public safety. And so one of our partners is going to be Hexatronics, and we will be utilizing two key platforms for them. The Atlas platform, which utilizes the M300, and the much smaller universal platform, which you can do Mavics, and we'll be setting that up with the Parrot and Anafi USA, as a matter of fact. And those have lots of flexibility in terms of communications. We can do LTE, we can do standard RF, we can do Starlink, excuse me. So we have lots of different options there, and then we'll be looking at additional platforms with additional sensors. So that's going to be really key. And I think with the Autonomy Lab, we really see this as being really sensor driven and sensor back. So the important thing is not so much the dock. It's going to be starting with what data do we need to collect, and what's the most efficient platform and sensor to collect it, and then working that into your dock. Then looking at what's the most effective comms that's going to allow us to cover the area that we need to cover. And then eventually it'll be a software thing in terms of how we're going to manage all that data and how we're going to actually deal with that. And there's going to be some different applications. Jonathan, if you could skip to slide 10, actually, just or 9, there we go. You're going to see some applications that are going to be different, where we can start to get right into mobility applications, and lots of different ways where we can deliver these platforms specifically to certain areas. So Scott, for you, in terms of the lab, what are you most excited about in terms of deployments and trying out new things for this drone in the box technology?
Yeah, and we're interested in any sort of mobile platform that can be deployed quickly, and one thing we're looking at is integrating, ground based with aerial based inspections, right? So combining the two, so you can get data from both, and then get a better picture of what's going on depending on your environment. So that sort of mixed operations is one area that we're quite interested in.
Fantastic. And so we'll be coming up with some different projects and integrating Levitas and different areas in there. So we're really excited about those projects coming up. So at this point, Scott, I promised we'd have you out of there at 11:30 to get back to educating young minds and running.
I gotta go pick up Spot from Sydney. That's on the agenda.
So thank you very much for joining us, Scott, and
All right.
we'll continue.
Thanks
all
for
of that.
having me. Bye.
All right. So Jonathan, if you could talk about, so actually before you go back to this, so actually go to the slides, Jonathan. So let's go back one slide to slide number 9 here. So one of the first initiatives that we're going to have for the aerial side of the Autonomy Lab, I'm pretty excited about this, is going to be the launch of the official DJI Dock beta user program here in Canada. So we are going to be accepting applications for that starting next week, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. Before we do that, as I mentioned, those of you who caught our first day's session will see the box first look we had back when we got the dock in November. So we had one of the 2 docks that were out there for testing, and we were able to deploy it at a number of organizations here in Canada, which was pretty exciting. So Fraser led that deployment. So Fraser, let's talk about what did we actually learn from deploying the first one of these in the field. Now, obviously, we had the Percepto unit at OPG for a while. That was a very specific application, but we had a number of new applications with the DJI Dock. So what did we learn from that?
So we learned all kinds of stuff. Before I talk sort of specifically about the types of applications we worked with, I'll just sort of speak more generally. we're super excited about drone in the box systems being deployed now, because this is really, I don't want to sound cheesy, but this is nothing less than revolutionary for the types of capabilities we can get out of drone systems. So the probably the biggest insight here is that we need to take pretty radically different approaches to the use of these systems. A fleet management approach is going to be entirely different. Maintenance sort of models need to be a little different. We may even have, for example, service vehicles performing maintenance in the field, because obviously these are now stationary platforms rather than them coming back to the office for maintenance. So that's sort of a major consideration that we're thinking very much about. In terms of the operations of the system, of course, the whole point of a drone in the box system is to teleoperate it. We don't need to be on site with the drone in a box. We can be somewhere else in a different city, in a different country, and still gather the types of data we need. Or the drone in the box can just execute missions on a schedule or on demand, and these missions could have been programmed a long time ago. And what that means is that the actual people using the data don't need to be the ones operating the drone. Now, this is the case today, in a sense. Lots of people are contracting in drone service providers to gather data for them. But with the drone in the box system, this sort of model is still possible. But now, the cost of this data should come way down. So if the drone resides on site, for example, permanently, but the asset owner is not the owner of the dock, they're contracting the service from somebody else, they're just effectively buying the data, they don't even need to be they don't need to have a drone program. They don't need to have the training or everything that goes along with that. So that's sort of a fascinating possibility for us here, for entrepreneurs in the field, and for the people who want to buy this data. Another big insight is that none of this is an insurmountable challenge. None of these barriers to entry are too great. Leaving aside how compelling the possibilities are, this is not too difficult to execute. So these systems are still very user-friendly. The control interface is a little bit different, but that also brings new possibilities. So that's pretty awesome that we have these new capabilities that are still going to be very accessible to us. We're going to get entirely different mission profiles possible. For example, we'll use a simple example like site security. A drone in the box mission can be triggered by some other type of event. It could be triggered by a security sensor on site or something else to execute effectively on demand, but without intervention from an operator. So that's sort of a simple example of the types of new possibilities we have with these systems. Some of our other interesting insights came from partners and clients that we've talked to or shown these systems to. And those really are that they get it. When we talk about how these systems work, what they can do, it's sort of obvious to the people who want these things what things they can do with them, what insights they can get, what new use cases that they could employ from these systems. Even if they're kind of industry outsiders, their wheels are turning and they've got lots of ideas about how to employ these systems. So that's really exciting for us, and I think bodes well for the possibilities of these systems in the marketplace. Also, we've heard that they really need to know where the data is going. The nature of these systems is that the data flows through a server somewhere. We're teleoperating, we're gathering data from somewhere off-site. Well, that data needs to go somewhere. And it's extremely relevant to our clients and partners where that goes. It's a major area of concern. And so it's nice to see that already we're going to have lots of different options for control interfaces, some of which will allow on-prem servers, some of which are going to employ North American-based servers, and we've actually got a partner who's going to have all their servers in Canada, because for many of our partners and clients, that's important as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be an exciting part of the lab, and I know we keep saying it's exciting, but we've already had some pretty amazing adventures on there. So, Jonathan, if you want to go back and just put the doc back up. So we kind of teased this on day one. So I will say just we're proud to announce that RMUS is one of 2 DJI Dock licensed resellers in Canada, and we will be getting a unit here. It's actually on the way now, and so I'm very excited to announce the official DJI Dock beta user program, brought to you by the Autonomy Lab. And so what we're going to be doing, you'll see a bunch of information online. But essentially what we're doing is we are opening up applications. Next week, we will be selecting 5 organizations, and these will be organizations that are asset owners, that have either drone programs or planned drone programs that are looking to deploy the autonomous technology. And there'll be a bunch of criteria that we'll see. But we will be delivering a 2-week beta test program on site, on your site, across Canada. And what we will provide is the dock that you see there. We will provide all the training and implementation support that you need. We will provide Fraser's team for support for implementation, and we will provide a technical personnel for the 2 weeks on site. And so we will obviously be looking for some commitment from those organizations, which will be part of the selection process. But you will have a chance to be one of 5 innovators here in Canada that will have a great chance to get a lot of visibility for your drone program internally in the organization, have a extremely low risk opportunity to test this technology and showcase your drone program internally. And you will have first dibs to step out and be able to have a lower cost pilot program that will be of something of a longer duration, 4 to 6 weeks, to really, really test the program. The initial stages, we're going to be keeping it pretty simple in terms of uncontrolled airspace. Once we start to get into the pilot process, our team will work with you hand in hand, along with Transport Canada, to develop all the applications you're going to need for any BVLOS ways to think. And that's going to be one of the things about this technology is you're going to want to be thinking about BVLOS early on as opposed to just deploying it, even if you're not going to fly beyond your site.
Yeah, that's really how to get the most out of these systems. We believe it will be possible to get these models working, and so that's super exciting. This is really an opportunity to not only be an early adopter, but to figure out exactly what your process is going to be with the maximum level of support, from us. This will be a collaborative process. We've already got lots of experience with the systems, so this is a great opportunity that I'll say it again, I'm super excited about, because this is like the coolest part of my job here at RMUS. Get to figure out how to actually make these things work in the real world.
Excellent. So application process will begin next week. We will be sending out some invites directly to our existing partners, but we will also be opening up this to public companies that are interested that maybe have not done business with RMUS before, and you'll have a chance to be selected for this program as well. So that's going to be pretty exciting. On top of that, we will be having the Hexatronics platforms that will be available at our road shows, which will be starting out west on Thursday, May 11th in Vancouver, followed up by the 12th in Victoria, the 16th in Calgary, and the 18th in Edmonton. We will have the Universal with us. And of course, look for them along with the Atlas, which is the M300 size one, at our trade show, which will be at our HQ in Mississauga on the 14th and 15th of June. So with all that said now, I would like to talk about that. So that's going to be the industrial part of this. We are also going to be supporting our public safety agencies, and Andy and Fraser will be working hand in hand for development of the DFR, Drone as a First Responder programs. So we have spent a lot of time learning from the U.S. Deployments. Chula Vista, again, you saw Captain Fox's interview with Eric on Wednesday. Andy has spent a lot of time down there as well, but we'll be working with agencies that are interested to help them to deploy the drone-in-a-box technology and others for DFR programs. So, Jonathan, if you want to go back to the slides and scroll ahead for us, there we go. So really what we're looking at is really the path to scalable autonomy in DFR. So if you can think about this, what we're gaining for is always ready systems. So they're ready to go whenever emergencies happen, which is when they happen, not when we plan for them to happen. We need to have long flight times or at least long aerial coverage or ground coverage. We need to have relatively high speed, quick response. We're going to need a high quality stream. It's going to be very important to be able to get live data for situational awareness. And that could be data for different things that are happening in terms of hazmat, all kinds of things. We're gonna want to start to explore long range. Some of these things, Ottawa immediately comes to mind, but really could be anywhere where they have these huge metropolitan areas. We just have a lot of room, and so will we be able to deal with things that are far away and not just close to our headquarters? Obviously, especially as we introduce higher levels of autonomy, we're going to need very high reliability, and part of that is going to go hand in hand with having some onboard obstacle avoidance as well within that. Jonathan, if you would. So what are the components of scalable urban BB-LOS without a visual observer? Obviously, we need to have the hardware. We've talked about it between DJI and Hextronics. We need a drone. Again, we're going to be sticking with what you know. So we are, at this point, very wary of drone-in-the-box providers with their own drone. Our early recommendation is stick with the drones that you are already flying as much as you can. You're going to have a Nest, the box. You're going to need a C2 link, which is going to be some of your communications, which will be dependent on where you are. You're going to need your payloads. You're going to need, possibly when you get into more advanced, you're going to need detect and avoid. You're going to need software for this. You're going to need software for the stream, software for the fleet management, software for the forwarding of the video stream. All of those things we'll have addressed. Eventually, you're going to need image analysis. So if we automate this, what can we do for pre-warning, things like that? Environment mapping, this is where we talk about the hazmat, and of course, service and training. So our team here, if you want to go back to the live view of us fine gentlemen. So our team is going to be doing that. So I'm going to pass it along now to Andy Olson. So Andy is going to be, along with Fraser, leading these drone as a first responder initiatives. And so it's actually not just drone in the box. So maybe Andy, take the audience through how you envision the whole look and feel of really what drone in a first responder, DFR drone as a first responder really is and what it encompasses.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So like DFR is really, I would call it a concept. It's basically taking all the innovation and systems that are out there and seeing how it's going to apply to law enforcement. So in the case of drones, it's the ability to fly from one location, respond to a scene, gather information, do it quickly so that either you don't have to commit resources to something that doesn't need that many resources, or you get better information to provide to the vehicles that are going. It's the ability to get on scene quickly and gather information. If it's police responding to a report of an armed person, it's being able to quickly determine if the person is actually armed or if the person doesn't have anything armed. That kind of information is crucial. And it really does take, and we've talked this week about fixed wings. We've talked about remote teleoperations. These are going to be all drone in the box, are going to be all incorporated into a DFR program. It's understanding how the impact is going to affect efficiencies. It's going to understand training. All these things are going to come into place. When we talk about fixed wings, the ability to fly, either stay on station longer and gather more information without having to come back and recharge. It's the ability to fly further. With drone in the box, right now it's having a system that you have to manually set up and take down. Drone in the box will let you have a system there 365 days a year, 24/7, and you can deploy it or station it somewhere remotely so that it's in a secure location and you can fly it from there because you can use the remote teleoperations. You don't have to be in the same city. You could be somewhere else and fly and gather information. So it's DFR is really a concept, and it's pulling all the systems, the training, the technology, all into one place with the idea that it's going to make systems better and safer.
Excellent. Excellent. So between you and Fraser, why don't we talk a little bit about how is the RMUS team going to work with departments in order to start deploying drone as a first responder?
Yeah, well, what we want to do is basically learn what we don't know. Our friends in the States have been doing a lot of this, so we want to kind of learn. They're very helpful in sharing information, but there's always going to be unknowns. So we're going to take this technology and try it in large city areas, try it in remote areas, try it over water, try it in a bunch of different scenarios, so that we can learn all those lessons and develop the business cases and develop the policies and procedures. And even with our own regulators, Transport Canada, I know they're very interested because it's important they understand this technology. The technology moves much faster than regulations can ever keep up. So the more information, the better understanding of where this is going to be, as much as we can, a year, 2 years from now, the better we're able to hopefully come up with regulations that will support it. When BVLOS regulations come out in maybe about a year, that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for fixed wing, for drone in the box. So it's important to make sure that the regulations, as much as they can, are reflective of the technology. So that's where working with our regulators, working with the agencies that are going to use it, and understanding from industry. I know people like Scott and a lot of the industry out there, this is one of the few areas, I think, where there's a lot of crossover. And when mining companies use drone in the box, or remote operations, or police or fire, or any of those agencies do, everybody learns from each other. So it's being able to, programs like this week are awesome for being able to share that information, because it just moves the whole system ahead that much further.
So, yeah, well said, Andy. Learning together is definitely the coolest part of working in this industry. And so, our piece of this will be really enabling public safety agencies to carry out that learning process. So, we'll be helping with the installation, providing the technical support that's needed, some training, and just ongoing help with the process, so that the public safety agencies participating can figure out the operating piece and figure out their processes and policies, and then hopefully this can help to inform government policy going forward.
Excellent. Yeah. So just to summarize, I think the way the technology is I think it really plays to what we try and do here at RMUS, which is really take this holistic approach to enterprise and large public safety agency programs. And so we will be, not just providing equipment, but working with you and your team on the operational side. So obviously Andy is got lots of experience in that and leading these programs. The training side is what it's going to mean. Fraser talked earlier about this is going to change a little bit of the way we think about operations, which is going to change how we think about training. So those are critical parts of of that process. Really, then obviously you've got the equipment part of this as well, and then working with the regulators. So we've worked with already with OPG and helping them to get the BVLOS certification for the drone in the box for their program. And then as these programs come out, we will actively be working as well. So as we start to get into some of the long-term pilots past the initial terms, then we'll be working with you in all those ways. So really to make it as simple as possible. And then the last part of that is really once we get the information, once we get this on there, is collecting that data and really helping with the ROI for a business case, whether you're a public safety agency or whether you're a private or public enterprise, right? And so that's going to be critical to helping you with adoption, because we all want, we're committed to building these programs out. So that's something we're very excited about. The team is growing and is really, I think, doing a good job in putting everything, the tools in place to be able to do that. And we're looking forward to it. So, with that, I'm going to, if you have any questions, please throw your questions up in the chat box. I do want to take an opportunity to talk about the upcoming events from RMUS. So if you can go to slide number 14, Jonathan, and we will just kind of talk about. I said it a little bit at the beginning, but you've had a chance to see a lot of this stuff and hear some discussions this week virtually, and so now it's time to get out and meet the people, see the team, everything like that. And so we will have the road shows. So you can see on the right there, invitations will be going out probably immediately after we finish this for the Western Canada road shows. So we are going to be starting in Vancouver Thursday, May 11th, and that will be at the Vancouver Fire Training Center downtown. And then followed that up on on Friday the 12th, we'll be in Victoria. So that will be hosted again by CFB Esquimalt. We're excited to be back there. Great venue, and they really showed us some excellent hospitality last year. We will then be moving on to Calgary Tuesday, May 16th, and that will be at the Equestrian Center there, which is a great venue in the British Room, Fraser. Yes, very swanky. So we'll have a nice spread, and we'll be out in the field. And then Edmonton will be on Thursday, May 18th, hosted by Edmonton International Airport. So it's always cool flying drones at an airport, isn't it?
Maybe for the guys who don't have to fly.
It's cool for me. So yeah, Fraser, is that some gray hair there? Yeah. So that'll be the Western ones. We're excited. We're just going to be shipping all the gear out there. So all of these things you'll get a chance to see. The Hexatronics drone in the box. We'll have the Dragonfish there. We'll have the DJI product suite. We'll have the Para product suite. We will have Spot with the arm this year. We will have Deep Trekker. And so for the venues that have water near them, we'll be doing some diving, and you'll get to see that. So a pretty exciting assortment. We'll also be doing some remote operations with the Vodex platform. You'll get a chance to see the streaming, see how great it is. Let's give a shout out to Vodex. Like that latency on the stream was pretty impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. And as far as I know, they're unique in the ability to show multiple streams at a time. And there's sort of different approaches to how you access the streams. So we're really pleased with what we're seeing from Vodex, and it seems like our partners are as well.
Excellent. So Jonathan, if you can just quickly go back to the slide. So we'll see you guys out west in a couple of weeks. We don't want the central and eastern Canada to feel everything. So we will be in La Belle Provence, RMUS Quebec, hosted by our friend Stéphane Laurent. And that will be in Montreal, May 30th. And then we will be at CanSec in Ottawa, May 31st and June 1st at the trade show there. And then we will have the Ottawa Roadshow Friday, June 2nd. And that will be public safety and invite only. So if you are an agency and you would like to come and see some very interesting platforms, let us know and we will put you on the guest list. And frankly, it's the social event of the whole year, maybe the biggest event in the Canadian drone industry, with all due respect to Aerial Evolution Conference. That'll be the second annual RMUS trade show at HQ here in Mississauga. You will get to see all of these goodies in person. Probably a dock on the roof. Are we going to take people up to the roof?
If we can get the dock on the roof, we'll take people on the roof. Maybe it'll be outside. We'll see where it is.
All right. So there'll be a lot of stuff. There'll be robot dogs running around. Andy will be here, so we'll have like the Superman of RMUS here. You'll get a chance to see everybody in person, meet the RMUS team, and generally have a good time. So Jonathan, you can drop that one out now, so we can sign off. So Andy, anything you want to add to the road shows? And sorry, and I will add one more thing. Sorry, before I throw it to Andy, we will be out in Eastern Canada, so we're just finalizing that. It looks like Quebec City on the 26th of July. Halifax on the 28th of July, and then Fredericton on the 30th, whatever that Monday is, the 30th of July, I think. So pretty exciting. So Andy, anything you wanted to add about road shows or cool stuff that you're working on with your gang?
I just think everybody knows the best way to understand equipment is to be able to get out and get hands-on. So I think the road shows are an excellent way to get out and actually see the stuff before you actually make any purchasing decisions. As far as stuff we're working on, we'll be able to share that, but it's all around better understanding how fixed wing systems and drone in the box and basically getting them out and putting them into actual real world scenarios to better understand that. So we'll be able to share all those probably in the fall by the time we're done all our scenarios and evaluations.
Excellent. Okay. So with that, Andy, if you want to just stick around when we get her backstage, with that, I want to say a big thanks to all our viewers for all the sessions on Tech Week, and a huge thank you to all. What did we have? About 20, 25 different panelists. Incredible. huge shout out to our head of marketing, Angela Pasheri. She's awesome. She worked her ass off putting all this together, organizing it, and I don't know, how awesome is Angela?
I mean, as awesome as one can get.
Pretty
Let's
awesome.
be real.
Yeah, she was great. We want to thank Jonathan. Would you come out and at least let you show your face here? Jonathan in the control room, behind the scenes. So many of you keep coming in here. So Jonathan, obviously, many of you talk to him on the phone. He's responsible for getting all your gear, and he does it all here. He's a Swiss Army knife without being Swiss. And Jonathan, thank you for all your hard work. He's aged about 40 years during this, so he'll be ready this weekend to relax a little bit. So thanks to the team, and also obviously thanks to Liz and Ravi for holding down the fort out front for us while we're all playing TV stars here. So anything you want to add to that, big guy?
Just want to echo your thanks to the audience, all the attendees, and especially to all the participants this week. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you at the road shows.